Hello, I am Elnie Honorica, and today I'll be talking about GMO, Genetically Modified Organism. What is GMO? GMO is a plant, animal, or another organism that has had its genetic makeup modified in order to produce a more desirable outcome, such as enhanced nutrition or a stronger resistance to disease. Let's take a look at the history of GMO. In 1935, Russian scientist Andrei Nikolaevich Belozersky isolates pure DNA. In 1973, the idea for man-made DNA or rDNA comes from a grad student at Stanford University Medical School. Professor Herbert Boyer and a few of his biologist colleagues runs with it. In 1975, a group of biologists get together with a few lawyers and doctors to create guidelines for the safe use of genetically engineered DNA. In 1980, a court case between a genetics engineer at General Electric and the U.S. Patent Office is settled by a 5-4 Supreme Court ruling, allowing for the first patent on a living organism. The GMO in question is a bacterium with an appetite for crude oil, ready to gobble up spills. In 1982, humulin, an insulin produced by genetically engineered E. coli bacteria, appears on the market. In 1994, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration approves the flavored savory tomato for sale on grocery store shelves. The delayed ripening tomato has a longer shelf life than conventional tomatoes. In 1996, weeds resistant to glyphosate, the herbicide used with many GMO crops, are detected in Australia. Research shows that the superweeds are 7 to 11 times more resistant to glyphosate than the standard susceptible population. In 1997, the European Union rules in favor of mandatory labeling on all GMO food products, including animal feed. In 1999, over 100 million acres worldwide are planted with genetically engineered seeds. The marketplace begins embracing GMO technology at an alarming rate. And in 2000, golden rice engineered to mitigate vitamin A deficiency. But the question is, are they safe? There have been many arguments whether GMO is safe to eat or not. So, which side is true? There have been over 2,000 studies done by many different scientists to see if the GMO plants are harmful to animals or the environment. And one group of scientists reviewed data from over 1,000 studies and concluded that there is no evidence that GMO plants are unsafe to eat. According to Robert Hollingworth, a professor from Michigan State University, no food, GM or non-GM, is absolutely safe. However, it is very close to the universal conclusion of every expert who has evaluated it, that the GM crops we have at the moment are as safe to consume as the standard crops that we have been consuming for years. Despite these studies, still there is a divided opinion about its safety, not only among the public, but also among scientists and doctors. But rest assured that the World Health Organization and the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations maintain a set of science-based standards, guidelines, and practices called the Codex Alimentarius to promote good, safe food for everyone. It includes biotechnology and genetic engineering too. And we also have Food and Drug Administration. The FDA's job is to make sure all food, genetically altered or not, is safe to eat. Through the Plant Biotechnology Consultation Program, the FDA raises safety concerns during the engineering processes and helps developers identify the kinds of testing they should do. Approved commercial products with GMO. soybean that is glyphosate herbicide tolerant, corn that is resistant to insect pests, canola that has altered fatty acid composition, and plum that is resistant to plum pox virus. Potential GMO application. A number of microorganisms are being considered as future clean fuel producers and biodegraders. Genetically modified plants may someday be used to produce recombinant vaccines. Genetically modified animals have been used to grow transplant tissues and human transplant organs, a concept called xenotransplantation, and production of other commercially valuable proteins in plants such as spider silk protein and polymers that are used in surgery or tissue replacement. Risk and controversies surrounding the use of GMOs. Risk. Potential health risks to humans include the possibility of exposure to new allergens in genetically modified foods, as well as the transfer of antibiotic-resistant genes to gut flora. It can also cause ecological imbalances, allowing previously innocuous plants to grow uncontrolled, thus promoting the spread of disease among both plants and animals. And the enhanced mating advantages of the genetically modified fish led to a reduction in the viability of their offspring. Thus, when a new transgene is introduced into a wild fish population, it propagates and may eventually threaten the viability of both the wild type and the genetically modified organisms. Controversies. BT corn had been successfully used as an environmentally friendly insecticide for several years. Unfortunately, seeds containing genes for recombinant proteins can cause unintentional spread of recombinant genes or exposure of non-target organisms to new toxic compounds in the environment. It is said that the natural levels of BT corn pollen in the field were harmful to monarchs. Another concern associated with GMOs is the private companies will claim ownership of the organisms they created and not share them at a reasonable cost with the public. If these claims are correct, it is argued that use of genetically modified crops will hurt the economy and environment because monoculture practices by large-scale farm production centers who can afford the costly seeds will dominate over the diversity contributed by small farmers who can't afford the technology. Attitudes toward cloning, biotechnology, and genetically modified products differ depending upon people's level of education and interpretations of what each of these terms mean. Support varies for different types of biotechnology. However, it is consistently lower when animals are mentioned. Furthermore, even if the technologies are shared fairly, there are people who would still resist consumable GMOs, even with the thorough testing for safety, because of personal or religious beliefs. The ethical issues surrounding GMOs include debate over our right to play God, as well as the introduction of foreign material into foods that are abstained from for religious reasons. In conclusion, respect for consumer choice and assumed risk is as important as having safeguards to prevent mixing of genetically modified products with non-genetically modified foods. In order to determine the requirements for such safeguards, there must be a definitive assessment of what constitutes a GMO and universal agreement on how products should be labeled. And also, legislative practices that regulate researches about GMO have to keep pace. Prior to permitting commercial use of GMOs, governments perform risk assessment to determine the possible consequences of their use, but difficulties in estimating the impact of commercial GMO use makes regulation of these organisms a challenge. Still, it is our choice to consume GMO products or not. So, what's your choice? Thank you for listening.